You're listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 14 of the Leafs Nation Radio podcast. We're missing Kyle today because he's writing an exam. So if everyone could put good, positive vibes out into the universe for Kyle, that'd be great. But it's Caroline here. I got Nick Barton. I got Scott Maxwell. We're here ready to break down everything that's going on in Leafs land. But first, as always, we have a song of the week. So I'll start it off because this week's been I've been trying to get back to my workouts. And one song that always, no matter what, gets me pumped and ready to get through, leg day is Ric Flair Drip. So that's my song for the day. So that's mine. And you guys can share yours.
Scott, you go first. Hey.
I'd say the one I've been coming back to a lot this week is Smoking Out the Window by,
yes.
Silk Sonic, but it's Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak's little side project. I've been a fan of Anderson .Paak for a few years. So seeing him get a lot bigger now because he's working with Bruno Mars and they're really trying to bring back that classic R&B Motown kind of vibes. I'm kind of excited to see what comes of that. But that song in particular, just I don't know, I can't quite describe it. It's just it kind of has cool vibes and a really funny music video too.
I love it too. I love that song. Go ahead, Nick.
That is really weird because I was literally right before the podcast, I was listening to those, all of those songs, just trying to figure out whether or not I wanted to put one of those in. But the one I have, it's by Shawn Mendes. It's called Always Been You, but it's a special one because it's live from, cool. It says the Wonder Residencies. And I don't know, when I was younger, I always hated listening to live music, but the way music artists are able to put their own spin on the songs and just change them in certain ways to make them sound cooler has sort of been a thing that I've liked over the last 1 or 2 years, which is really weird. But yeah, that's a good song, especially if you want to just hang out and just listen to a song.
There's a new John Mayer song that he put out recently that I'm obsessed with. I don't know what the title of it is, but I get exactly what you're saying, Nick. And it's funny as we grow older, how our music taste and palette, as you'd call it, expands and grows. Honest to God, last week, Scott, your song was Somebody Else by 1975. And when you said that, I was like, I think I listened to that song a lot. And then I went to my Spotify recently played list, and that's way up there. I love that group. I love that band. I listened to every single one of their songs because I was like, it sounds so familiar, but I don't know, I'm not obsessed, but their songs are always playing for me. And I love their sound. So it was funny to see that after our episode. Okay, let's get into hockey. Nick, why don't you start us off with the news that has dropped with the pandemic?
Well, it's from Rick Westhead. I don't know if it's, I didn't read the first part, but it says spoke to infectious disease Dr. Andrew Morris about pro sports events and Omicron. He says the Omicron cases doubling in Ontario every 2 to 3 days, estimates 10K daily cases by New Year's Eve, and then predicts Ontario government will soon have to close NHL and NBA games to fans. And then in quotes, I guess this is what the doctor said, was the government has no choice. So I don't know. I mean, that's just one doctor. I mean, there's obviously, what I've found is just there's so many different views from different doctors on certain, just for instance, this Omicron variant. I mean, I know I've talked to some people and they're with it being, I guess, it doesn't hit you as hard as the other variants. It can sort of lead us into herd immunity faster. I don't really know. I'm not a doctor, and I don't even think the person that was explaining it to me was a doctor, but yeah, I don't know. It's really weird because, again, I've heard too, the Omicron variant doesn't give you the same side effects and long-term effects as the other variants. So it's interesting, but again, it's all about the ICUs, and if they're going up and up and up and stuff, you got to do something. And it sucks because we're so close to
Yeah.
our normal reality, and then we're just gonna, like, we've gone so far and we've gotten so far and we're just gonna pull it all back. And it's like, it's hard. And I don't know. As much as people want to say like we got to close everything down, I'm sort of like, we've done that for so long, and like, I don't know. I don't want to get into it too much.
No, I know it's such a sensitive subject, right? Where I feel like the best way to, at least for me, in my opinion, is like I feel like sometimes when we talk about everything that's going on, the thing that's lacking in society is empathy for both sides. So I respect people's opinions. For me personally, of course, the safety of ourselves, the safety of others, the safety of those who are at risk is the most important thing. However, we do have to go back to life eventually, right? So I don't know what that looks like. Obviously, doctors know way more about what's going on than we do. However, that makes me like sad to hear, because I feel like exactly, Nick, what you're saying, we're so close, right? There's fans in hockey games, football games, soccer games. Like, I went to my first hockey game this year in 2 years, and I was like, whoa, like this feels good. And God forbid, this what's it called?
Omicron.
Variant really unfortunately takes off, and people start getting it. Like, I would hate, for one, that to happen, and two, for society to go back to staying at home. It's just, we've come so far. It's really, when you told me that when the podcast started, I'm like, oh no.
It was really weird because like I remember around like December, January, February. Scott, do you remember whether was everything was closed then, because it was December 26th was the lockdown day, right?
It was like the weekend after that or something like that, because they wanted it to be open for Boxing Day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was weird because it was like everything is going so bad, and then Doug Ford is just like, we're gonna wait until 2 days after Christmas. But I just remember, like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, it's not really surprising if you know the motives as to why he was doing it, but I won't go into that.
But
this is
I remember, I just remember like everything closed down, and like I had nothing to do. And it was just so nice, because I was thinking about it today. It was just like, the winter's coming. I'll be able to go, like, just maybe at like 4:00 in the afternoon or 3, go out in a pond and skate, which is really nice. And hopefully that can happen again. And I know I'll be busy this time around, but hopefully I have time for that. But no, so it's getting scary.
Did it say anything, Nick? Like, okay, so fans might not be allowed in the stands. Did they say anything about travel? How would it work if obviously Canadian team's playing in a US team? Does it say anything like that?
It doesn't really. It was only like one tweet, and this physician, it's just, again, like, it's one physician saying this. And like today there was, I think, 1,500 plus cases in Ontario, and it keeps going up and up and up. So I mean, I feel like, especially with Calgary now canceling their games, like with the COVID situation, it's getting like, it's starting to ramp up again, and it's getting a little bit scary. And in terms of the Olympics too, that's a big thing that's going to be tough to figure out. But
let's go on that. Do we think that the Olympics should be happening?
The Olympics in general, or hockey in the Olympics? The NHL going?
We'll say NHL. We'll say NHL. Hockey going to the Olympics.
Like, I don't know. I think yes and no. I think yes, because I know the players want it and they want to go. And like, there's some guys who this could be their last Olympics. Like, there's a few players on Team Canada who it could be their last Olympics. So in that sense, like, yes. But in terms of COVID and everything, like, I know, like, there was quarantining. Like, if somebody was to catch COVID there, they'd have to stay there for 3 weeks. Which down the line, if they were to get it right before they had to leave, like, would suck, because they would have to stay. And just the human rights aspects to it as well. Not not the best thing in the world. I mean, the Olympics aren't, I know the Olympics are great for a lot of athletes. To me, I don't know. I don't really understand the hype around it all. Like, I like the hockey aspect and a few other sports. Like for example, like soccer, like the women's soccer, they won. That was amazing. But there was really no men's soccer there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have a weird relationship with the Olympics. Like, I like to watch some sports, and then some sports are like a little bit more toned down and it's not really that big. But yeah, I have, like, as much as I want them to go, I'm on the side of saying no as well if it gets really bad with COVID.
From a purely selfish standpoint, as to it'll make work for me a lot busier. I hope the Olympics doesn't happen.
I love Scott's takes because they're always so real. I love it.
But like, yeah, even just I also like the Olympics from a hockey like entertainment standpoint have never been fully interesting as well, just because like it's usually been Canada dominating, which like is great as a Canadian, but it also just doesn't really make for an overall engaging tournament. Especially when like Canada can apparently bring in like Tom Wilson and like they'll still probably clean house. Like, it's kind of boring when they can like make stupid decisions and still like win handedly. And then, yeah, just like from a COVID perspective, like we've seen in the past with the bubble, with the NHL playoffs, the World Juniors last year, that it's possible to pull a short tournament like this off in a bubble. But like, yeah, if someone catches COVID like right before, then that's going to cause problems if they go back to the NHL season. Who knows if that's even going on with how this is going. I mean, I don't think that'll be the case. Sounds like they'll just go the route of like closing off arenas to the fans, worst case scenario. But yeah, and then from a human rights perspective, yeah, it just doesn't really make sense for any of this to be happening at this point with cases on the rise.
I totally agree with that. I want life to go back to normal, like very much so. However, if it means a couple players or a handful of players getting COVID, them going back to their teams, then everyone getting COVID, then it spread. That's how it just, we know the deal. It spreads like wildfire. It doesn't make sense to me. And then God forbid those individuals, those human beings who are at risk, right? Like we just can't, it's such a tough thing to navigate. And I don't know. I love the Olympics. I'm one of those people who watches every single event. I'll stay up late watching it. So from my perspective, it would be nice to have that. But in the same breath, like you hear about these NHLers right now, you know, the Islanders went through it where they had, you know, their cases of COVID. Cody Ceci here had COVID, you know, it's bound to happen. And everyone needs to say, first and foremost, everyone needs to stay safe. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with that, actually. Talking about Team Canada at the Olympics, this was supposed to be a little later in our chat, but let's just go right into it. Nick, you wrote a really good article on LeafsNation.com about Mitch Marner and why him and his resume deserve a lock on the Team Canada's roster. Maybe you can give us your opinion and maybe even touch on the injury he's facing, because didn't he go on long-term IR recently? And is it a shoulder injury that he's facing?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah. So I don't know. That's going to be one thing that could make him not be able to go to the Olympics.
That's what I was thinking. I read your article and I was like, 100% I agree with you. But I was like, if he's injured or if he's injured right now, are they even like considering him? Yeah,
I don't. Doug Armstrong, I know in the article there was like, I basically what I did was Daily Faceoff has Steve Greeley, and he did an article last week on Marner and how Tom Wilson could take his spot. And Doug Armstrong said they want players who, I guess, have playoff experience and have been good in the playoffs. And I don't understand it because Tom Wilson he just is such a different player to the Olympic style of game. Like, I know there's no fighting in the Olympics. I'm missing another rule that fits Tom Wilson's style of play. And I don't know, like when you see Mitch Marner playing his game, like, and he's not going to be unless he turns out to be really good on Team Canada. I don't think he's going to be in the maybe top two lines where he's going to be in the limelight a lot, and that's where he struggles. So one of the reasons that I think he should be in is just because if he's not in the limelight, he's just going to play his normal game, and that game is one of the best players in the NHL, and Tom Wilson is not even close to that. Like, you look at his numbers and it's unfathomable. Like, even in the playoffs, Marner produces at a better rate than Tom Wilson does. And I just don't understand the fact that, he's tougher and he can hit. The Olympics are a best on best type of game. There's not the same type of play as the playoffs where everyone's trying to hit each other and grind each other to a halt. It's just skill. And with Connor McDavid on a team and a bunch of other guys, why would you not want Mitch Marner on the team? Why would you want Tom Wilson, who's going to be on the fourth line with who knows? But yeah, I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. And it's not even that I'm being biased. It's just the fact that the numbers show how much better he is. And to me, it doesn't make sense.
I think Acting the Foolman put it best a few days ago that the reason why Canadian GMs feel like they have to do this kind of stuff where they like bring in some different elements is because they know damn well that they could just literally pick the top 12 in points for every position and just make a stacked team. So they feel like they have to make an impact. They want to, like, if they win gold, it's because they brought in Tom Wilson because they were smart about it. That's probably the biggest reason why. Like, the GMs have their own little ego. They want to feel like they actually did something to this team. And same thing like Babcock in 2014, making them like play tight 1-0, 2-1 hockey games. Like, probably he could have just let them play, but he's like, no, we're gonna play this like tight shutdown defensive game so that I can feel like I was the reason we won this thing. I think that's really what it all comes down to, is like, it's Marner should be in the Olympics based on his play. Like, even if it's like, we want to have like specialty players, like he can play power play, he can play PK. You can trust him in those last minutes of the ice. Plus, like, I mean, like, there are other players that are locks on that team that are good for those roles anyway. I don't know why you'd need specifically Tom Wilson. You're going to Europe, not Europe, Asia, but like international ice. So the ice will be bigger, which again does not benefit Tom Wilson. And yeah, like, the rules aren't like, they have stricter rules with like head hunting. Like, Tom Wilson's going to play his Tom Wilson game, and he probably won't last 5 minutes into the first game because he'll be kicked out of the tournament.
This is very, very true.
Imagine that. Like, they pick Tom Wilson, and then he just gets suspended and done for the whole tournament in the first game. That would look real good on Doug Armstrong.
Tom Wilson would have to find a way to like contain his emotions. You think it's doable for him?
I don't know. I think there might be a different mindset going into an Olympic
100%,
Games.
100%.
Like, I'm sure like he knows what's on the line of.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he like the like, as much as he's a bad hockey player, I'm sure he's not a bad person. It's just like, you have an opportunity to pick, like, if you think about it, who's another good right winger that's like, you have Patrice Bergeron, who will likely be on the right wing because he's a right shot, but like, there's Braden Point. Either I'm forgetting somebody, or like, he's like one of the best players on Team Canada on the right wing. Scott, I see you looking at a screen.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pull up like the top like points leaders for like Canadian hockey players for the last few seasons.
But I was just gonna say, I don't get it. I don't.
Yeah. So like, let's say we go by points. Our forward group would be Connor McDavid, Brad Marchand, Nathan McKinnon, Jonathan Huberdeau, Mitch Marner in fifth. Mark Scheifele, Mark Stone, John Tavares, David Perron, Steven Stamkos, Ryan O'Reilly, Patrice Bergeron, and then Ryan Strome would like be the extra forward. Although like Crosby's in 15th and he's already on the team. So like, yeah. We go by defense here. We got Cale Makar, Chris Letang, Shea Theodore, Tyson Berry. You can have them in like that seven, because they can have like an extra forward and D in every game. So you can be like that seventh D that doesn't play except for the top power play.
It's so funny. Everyone here in Edmonton's like, what's going on with Tyson Berry? I'm like, you guys are now seeing what the Toronto Maple Leafs fans were feeling when Tyson Berry was on the Leafs. No disrespect to Berry, but
how is he? Yeah. How's Cody? I know Cody Cece's injured, but how is he doing?
Cody Cece just came back from COVID. People like Cody Cece, so I don't want to be rude, surprisingly. But right now Tyson Berry's taking a lot of heat because he can't play. He struggles with defense. I don't want to be that person who like craps on someone, but that's the conversation right now.
And that was the conversation in Toronto. It's crazy to see like players who like come into Toronto and they don't play well, and then they go to another team and fans are so excited, and we're just like, you might want to be hesitant on that. Sort of like Nikita Zaitsev.
Yeah.
But I know DJ Smith loves Nikita Zaitsev. So
they're loving Zach Hyman here. So
I think some of that just comes with like Leafs fans are a bit crazy. So like we tend to freak out over everything. So they're like, oh, they freaked out over this player. They were probably just like exaggerating. It's like, nope, we freaked out for a good reason on this one.
Yep. Well, basically what Scott's saying in reading off all the Canadian players and their points is that Canada does have a really freaking stacked team. Like, please. My opinion, a healthy Mitch Marner, that's maybe 60-70% healthy, I'd take him every single day of the week. Like, I'm sorry. He's so good. He's one of my favorite players. You guys know this every podcast. I'm not, and Nick's like, not being biased, I'll 100% be biased. I think that he's so good. And I think right now, maybe the fact that he's on long-term IR is just because he's probably trying to get healthy to get that call up for Team Canada. So hopefully it happens. And in saying that though, too, if I'm a GM of a NHL team, I want Tom Wilson on my team. I think Tom Wilson's a scrappy guy who the players love to play with and can get everything going at one big hit. Like I just, some of Tom Wilson's hits, I'm like, this guy is so wrong for that. So I'm not like condoning what he does, but he does his job well. So that's my opinion on the big Tom Wilson. Brad Marchand's like that, but really skilled. So
it's crazy. Like a few weeks ago, we were talking about Zach Hyman possibly being there. I used to joke around and say Michael Bunting, but now like I don't know if it wasn't close to begin with, but now it's like the pack is starting to separate. And I know Zach Hyman's now injured. I think it was 2 to 3 weeks, but I don't think he's going to make it. I don't know. It was interesting to hear that debate in the beginning, but like there was a team that you could make with Team Canada that had so many skilled players on it. And Zach Hyman is very skilled and does everything well, but I don't know. I don't even know why I brought that up, but it's interesting. And now, I don't know. It looks like the pack is separating a little bit.
No, I'm sad about the Zach Hyman injury because Edmonton Oilers and the Leafs are playing tomorrow night. So I was hoping Zach Hyman would be playing that game and have a big night. But I don't think we'll be seeing him, unfortunately, because I feel like he would have had a big night. He's been playing. He had a moment against the Bruins where he could have tied the game for the Oilers. I don't know if you guys saw that. All he had to do was basically like tap the puck into the net, and he didn't.
2016 Zach Hyman.
Yeah, it was everyone was like, oh my God, but he's done such good things for the Oilers that, you know, no one's saying anything bad. It's just unfortunate that he's injured right now because luck is not on the Oilers side right now with injuries. So we'll talk about it though. Let's quickly talk about I think we have another 30 minutes left. Auston Matthews right now, this guy's on a freaking tear. You guys tell me everything that's going on, like the combos in Toronto. He leads the team in goals with 18 goals, tied with John Tavares for points at 31. So we all know he missed the first 3 games of the season, and he recorded only 2 points in the first 6 games. But now he's in the top 10 in the league in terms of points and top 3 in the league for goals. Like this guy, just like we said on, a few weeks ago, that we're not worried. Like Scott, you always alluded to this. You're like, I'm not worried about Auston Matthews because he's going to get to a point where he goes on like a goal streak, or he's just on fire, which is what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I think the reason why like it felt weird with Matthews this season is because we're used to him getting off to a hot start right away. Like it was always like his first 4 seasons, he always scored in the first game. Third game, it took him his 3rd game for his goal last season. So like we're not used to Matthews just like being cold off the start of the season.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I think this is just him catching up. Like at the end of the day, this is regression. Like he had a slow start, but he's just catching up. And so now he's level-headed with, Ovechkin and Draisaitl, who had hot starts to begin the season. Matthews has relied less on the power play than those two, particularly Draisaitl. I was actually surprised looking at the 5v5 goals stats, and Draisaitl is like a lot far. Like he has like not even 10, I think. Like he has a lot of power play goals so far this season.
So Scott's saying that Auston Matthews is better than Leon Draisaitl.
Oh yeah,
It's true.
That's not like I'm not even going to hesitate with that.
I love it.
Draisaitl can't play defense either, so I'm pretty confident with Matthews on that end of the ice.
Okay, yeah, maybe we'll clip this for Oilers Nation. Let's give our takes on
Good
who's
luck.
better, Auston Matthews or Leon Draisaitl, because everyone here, when they find out that there's a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, the first thing that they say is that Leon Draisaitl is in fact better than Auston Matthews. And I'm here alone on an island by myself. I don't have a leg to stand on, because it's like if I say it the reverse way,
Yeah.
I'm gonna get eaten alive. So I just shut my mouth.
I mean, yeah, you can debate me on like it because I'm like a biased Leafs fan, but I come from like I'm coming at this with like knowledge and like logic of like stats and shit that like back this up. It is not just me being like, oh yeah, like if I was gonna do that, I'd say Matthews is better than McDavid. But like that's insane. Although he is slightly better he's better defensively, but like McDavid is a mile ahead, like better skilled player. So yeah.
Does Leon Draisaitl play on the same line as McDavid?
They switch. Sometimes Leon will be with McDavid. Sometimes he's on the second line.
I'm interested to see like how many points like Draisaitl has with McDavid, because
That's a debate here in Edmonton. People say that like there's like the debates that go on, and one of them is that Draisaitl is so good because he has Connor beside him. But then I think Oilers fans kind of went deeper and pulled his stats from the second line and whatnot. So I don't know. There's so many debates about that. It's one big mess, really.
I think we should appreciate both players. I don't know.
Safe answer.
No,
Love it.
it's. I remember. I don't know if it was last season when Matthews was playing well, or the season before, but there was people saying like Connor McDavid's 1A, Matthews is 1B, and like I don't know. There's like Leon Draisaitl is good, and like there are things that he does, and he's I don't know. There's things that Auston Matthews does in games where you just think like, how the hell does he do that? Like, and the way he scores goals too in this season is so different than seasons past. Like he took sort of what he learned from his wrist injury last year in scoring goals, and now I believe most of his goals this season are close to the net. I don't think there are a lot of wrist shots. I know a few are, but it just seems like he's finding so many different ways to score goals. And I remember early on in the season, like he wasn't scoring, and it just seemed like it just came all at once. And it was like for me, there's days where I don't read stats and there's days where I don't dive in, and I I just sit there and then he scores a goal in the game and they're like, oh, he's like catching up to Leon Draisaitl. And I'm like, when did he score all these goals?
I
Like,
know, he's so good.
It feels like last season and now right now it just feels like you expect goals every single game, and it's just like it's normal. You don't really notice it if he scores because it's just something that's happened so many times. But for me personally, if I had to decide whether or not, I would say Matthews might be a little bit ahead of Draisaitl, but it's really, really close.
I think it'll be such a good game tomorrow because I know like Matthews loves playing the Oilers. I think he always has I think the McDavid Matthews matchup's always a good one. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does tomorrow. And the Oilers, I think right now are on a 5-game losing streak, which is their first 5-game losing streak since 2018. So they have like this, they really need a win on Tuesday night. However, the Leafs are really good. So, and I'm happy to say that because obviously the start of the season was a little shaky. They found their rhythm. So let's also talk about William Nylander because we've talked about him being consistent since last year's playoff run against the Habs and probably the most consistent player on the Leafs. He also had a hot week. Right now he has 13 goals, 17 assists, and 30 points for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What's not to like about William Nylander right now? Because every week we have something good to say about him. He might have like an off game here and there, but the guy does his job.
I don't know. Let's go ask Facebook. I'm sure they can give us some reasons.
Oh, are people trashing him?
Oh, they always do. It's more a joke than anything. But yeah,
Why are fans
everyone
like
always
that? Like, do they give him credit when he does his job, when he scores a goal, when he does something that only William Nylander can do? Like, do they give him credit, or is it just like we don't like William Nylander and that's how we're going to feel for the rest of time?
I think a lot of it is just it's the same thing with players like Ovechkin. Like they don't look like they're trying as hard just because they're so far, like from a skating perspective, they're just so far better than a lot of the players that they play with that they don't need to exhaust themselves just to like reach the same level as the players around them. And like, yeah, I think that's like, he just doesn't always like look, if you're going solely off of like eye test, he doesn't look like he's trying all the time. But like, if you actually pay attention to what he's doing or what he's creating from it, then like, yeah, like it's hard to argue anything against it. And like, again, it's mostly just people who don't like the thing with watching the games, like that argument is like, if you're just going off of that, it's a very selective memory. Like you don't remember every single detail of every single game. So like your memory is going to be very selective. And like, it was the same thing with Jake Gardiner when he was here. Like everyone thought he was terrible because all they can remember is that one bad pass that he'd make every game, but they'd forget the 20 good ones that he'd
Or
make.
is game 7 misplaced?
Yeah. Game 7's aside. But yeah, so like, I think just like people saw how he was earlier in his career, especially how the 2018-19 season played out. I think that has a lot to do with it as well. I think people are just still petty about how he held out, even though it wasn't really his fault, and it still somehow wasn't the worst contract negotiation out of the big three, or the nastiest one. Yeah, I can't really say why people don't like him because there's no logic to it at this point.
I respect an athlete that looks like they're not trying, but actually is. Just throwing that out there. I was never like that. I would like grind, come out off the field like blotches all over my face and whatnot. And I'm like, if the argument against William Nylander is like, oh, it looks like he's not trying, but he's our most consistent player, then people need to take a deep breath and move on nicely.
Yeah.
The fact that he's able to like, I remember when we talked about it early on in the season when the Amazon documentary was out, when last year they asked him like, where do you get your confidence from? And he was just like, I'm born with it.
I love that stuff.
Yeah, and like he just knows how to block everything out. He knows how to be good. And I know last season and a few seasons back, like he wasn't as consistent, but he's just learning to do that, and he's learning to do it. And when he does it every game, it's obviously not perfect right now, but there's going to be a time where he's going to be consistent every single game. And when that happens, like this guy's going to be, he already is like one of the best players in the league. I think there might be another level towards William Nylander, and it'll be crazy if there is one, because he's already really good, but especially too with him playing so well, not beside Auston Matthews, like that's a really good thing that I like. And it's like, as much as he can be really good beside Matthews at points, he can do the same with John Tavares, and he won't miss a beat. And that's one thing that I found really interesting over the last year or so, is just that he can, I wouldn't say drive his own line, but like at this point right now, like Tavares isn't as good as Matthews, but Nylander's doing so good. So
he holds his own.
Exactly.
Holds his own.
I'm excited. I mean, going back to the Olympics conversation, one reason why I would like the Olympics to happen is I'd really like to see what Nylander does, because he'd be playing a big role for Sweden. And we've seen how he steps up in the international role in the past with his winning the MVP in, 2017, I think, with Sweden at the World's Championship. So I think that could be interesting to see how that plays out as well.
Elias Pettersson and Nylander on a line.
Yeah. Or you reunite him with Backstrom from that international tournament. Those two were like, they scored some pretty nice goals in that tournament. But
yeah, that would be nuts.
I'm glad we're Leafs fans that aren't haters. I'm glad. I'd have a hard time doing a podcast with obviously with friends who are Leafs haters, or the negative ones, you know?
Well, that's just because we haven't talked about Justin Holl yet. No.
We could go. What do you have to say,
No.
Scott? Go ahead.
Nothing.
Start us off.
He's like, I mean, like I've been always found like just how deep this team is, that there aren't really players that I'm like, I don't want them playing another game. And like the closest to that has been like Justin Holl, just with like, you can tell that like, cause Muzzin isn't playing at his normal elite level, that he's struggling in that top four role. But like, honestly, he should just be further down the lineup, but that's not something they can do right now with Sandin and Dermott out. But yeah, that's more just a joke than anything. Although he is playing Edmonton tomorrow, and we all know how much he likes to play against Connor McDavid. So maybe it'll be a wake-up call for him.
We will see. I feel like there's so much to talk about. I almost wish that this podcast was on Wednesday so we could dissect that entire game, but we'll talk about it next week. Quickly, let's talk about the first line right now for the Leafs that we saw against the Blackhawks. Andre Kasha with Michael Bunting and Auston Matthews. Did we like that? And Andre Kasha back from injury, which is really good to see, because we're fans here. We're fans here of the player. So go ahead.
I like it. Like, I think he's earned that opportunity to be up there, and with Marner out, I mean, if it's not William Nylander up there, it's got to be somebody else. And it would be like Jason Spezza at times, but he's not there. I'm just thinking in my head right now, how many players aren't on the team right now? But no, he's always been an interesting player, just in terms of his injuries, and he has so much potential. And he's now, hopefully, there's no more injuries, and hopefully he can find something with Matthews when Marner is out, and then be able to go back down to the third line with David Kampf when Marner returns. But it's been interesting, and it's really, I'm really excited to see more of it.
Yeah, I admittedly didn't watch the game on Saturday night too closely, but
Unacceptable. I'm kidding. I didn't watch it because I was watching was it on
You were both
Sunday or
fired.
Saturday?
Saturday.
Yeah. I was watching the Oilers play, so I couldn't. But
yeah,
we both get access.
Yeah. Well, for me, I've just, since COVID, I've found like I don't care about Leafs games as much when I'm out like with friends and stuff, because like
It's fair.
Yeah, I was just like, I've been locked away for the last year. I want to actually normally if there was a Leafs game, I'd be like glued to my phone, or if there was like a screen playing it, I'd be watching that over interacting. But now I'm just like, you know what? Hockey's hockey. If there's plenty of games this season, maybe it'll be different come playoff time, I'm assuming, but like a regular season game. Plus, just with the fact that Leafs fans think the regular season is irrelevant right now. But
Scott, I totally get you. 2 years ago, my friends would be like, let's go for drinks and apps. And I'd say no, because I have to watch a hockey game or a basketball game. And when COVID hit, after year one, I was like, I'm never doing that again. Like, there's so much life to live, and it doesn't always have to revolve around every single game that's on television. So I get you completely. It's, COVID's taught us a lot.
Yeah. It's also nice to like just take a break from it. Like, it's, for me, like, I've really found it hard, especially with the Marlies, to try and find that break. It won't be games. I know it won't be games, but just like practices and having that commute and just trying to accept the fact that you can't be at every practice. And like that's one thing. But like there's been times where it's just like you want to watch the Leafs play, but it's also like it would be nice to have a night just not watching them. So
and let's normalize saying that being a sports fan or working in the sports industry, because everyone in this world needs to recharge their batteries at some point. And if that means you're covering a team or hockey or whatever sport every single day, you're allowed to kind of take a step back and be like, today I'm going to have dinner with like no TV on, and that's okay. That doesn't mean you're any less good at your job or you're any less of a fan. So I love that you guys are saying that, because I've even myself experienced that in these last couple of years. And I'm like, it's okay to do that. You need to, or you're going to feel like when you watch a game, you're going to feel like annoyed or tired or exhausted. And then that really you become less good at your job at that point.
Yeah. And it's challenging because too, like you don't make your days off. It's sort of like if you're covering a team, when the team's off, you're off. So it's like at some points, I know for myself, like it's really hard to figure out when that is. And it's like, I know the Marlies, if they play on Saturday, they play on Sunday, they're obviously going to have Monday off. So that's just one interesting thing too, is just like, especially with beat reporters, like I know like NHL beat reporters, like they don't get a lot of time off. Like,
oh no.
And especially like if a team makes a trade, it's like, you got to do it. You got to drop everything and do it. So it's an interesting job, but it's also you got to learn how to sometimes just recharge that battery and take a break.
So if for all those who are listening, this is your sign to recharge your batteries. This is exactly why we got into this conversation. Someone out there needed to hear that today. So that message brought to you by Nick, Scott, and Caroline. All right, quickly, the return of Peter Marazzic. Is Peter Marazzic the guy that brings depth in goaltending for the Leafs, or are we kind of over the Peter Marazzic era with the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I mean, I think he's played 3 games to this point. I don't want to. Yeah. Like I think that's really it. Is like we haven't really gotten to seen him play because he got hurt in his first game, came back for another game or two, and then got hurt again, and now this is his first game back again. So like he's still cold, and
he's very cold.
Yeah, like he hasn't had that consistent stretch to actually get him like ready for NHL play yet. So I'm gonna hold off on say like he hasn't looked great, but like there's some very legitimate reasons as to why that's the case up to this point. Not to mention like the team didn't play well in front of him on Saturday night either. I think it says a lot when you score the game-winning goal with like a minute something left and your GM is mad. That probably means you didn't play too well.
He played a game with the Marlies. He allowed 5 goals, but
I completely I agree. He's cold. You can't expect someone to come in after injury and all this time. Like practice is so different than the game. So I understand. But in that, there are times where obviously Jack Campbell is going to need a break. And is Peter Marazzic a goaltender that we can trust in between?
That's what it scares me, because
Exactly.
like with Frederick Anderson, like you could see the team sort of just start moving away from playing good in front of him over like last year, and it might have started the year before against Columbus. But I'm just hoping like the team, as much as they want to play for Jack Campbell, find a way to play for Peter Marazzic, just because like if he starts, like it's already been hard and difficult for him because he's been injured, but if he starts playing not well, the team is just going to I don't want to say lose faith in him, but like it's that sense of like when I played hockey, and it's just like you see a goal go in from a goalie and you just think in your head that should not go in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if I'm hoping that there's not a point where that happens to Peter Marazzic, where he starts allowing goals and then the team sort of loses their footing in front of him and they don't play as well as they do in front of Jack Campbell. But I'm hoping that they can just play the same, because that's what it's been a struggle to play the same in front of both goalies that the Leafs have had over the last year or so. So hopefully they can do that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they can.
I think that's another thing that'll take a little bit of time too, like because they don't know his play style yet. They don't know like what he does. So I think that'll take a little bit to get used to as well. Like, is he athletic? Can he slide across the crease so you don't have to worry about covering the 2-on-1 or something like that? Like, well, I mean, obviously cover the 2-on-1 and prevent that from happening. But yeah, like there's strategic elements that come with based on like how you're play in front of your goalie. Like there will always be concern with me with goalies, because at the end of the day, goalies are voodoo. And you can never predict what exactly they're going to do in a particular season. Like, I mean, Anderson is a pretty good example of that. For 3.5 years, he was steady Freddie, and then just was like one of the worst goalies in the NHL for the remaining year and a half of his time in Toronto. So like,
And
you
now
never really
killing it with the Canes.
Yeah, like it's, you just can't explain it. But like he's been not like consistent. Like he has his peaks and valleys, but like doesn't have too many like horrendous seasons in the NHL. Like looking at his stats now, well, this is his only full season with a like below 900 save percentage up to this point. It's not even a full season. His time with Philly was bad, but you know, it's Philly. And he has like a couple rough seasons here and there, one with the first bad team in Detroit in 25 years. So like he has a history of being like relatively good. And I think like he can provide that kind of stability like we saw with Frederick Anderson earlier on, but in a backup role.
All I'm going to say is Freddie Anderson, aka Nick's doppelganger. When the Oilers played the Canes, I told Mike, I'm like, the Canes' best player will be Freddie Anderson, and that's saying a lot because we all know that there's Sebastian Aho and whatever. But it's I just love Freddie Anderson so much. And I remember there was a time with the Leafs that this guy had like multiple 40+ saves a night. And I'm just like, who is he? And he played so well against the Oilers and had this one stop. Like, it was nuts. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins thought it was a goal. Everyone thought it was a goal, stopped it right on the line. It's crazy, but I miss Freddie in Toronto. I'm not going to lie. Like, I really miss him. I think he's an awesome goalie and a good guy. And I get sad when we talk about Freddie because I'm like, he should be in Toronto, but it is what it is. That's sports.
When you tweeted that the other night about Mike, I was going to respond. I meant to respond and say, I apologize for my brother's actions.
You should have. That TikTok trend, I'm not kidding, Nick, where like you do the Face ID unlock on your phone. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You should do that with Freddie when Freddie Anderson's trying to open his phone. To me, you guys are like spinning images. He just looks a little older than you.
No,
take the compliment.
Maybe. I do want to say,
NHLer.
I do want to say though, I'm just looking on Twitter now. Ryan Rishaug said that that Tippett said that Zach Hyman's day-to-day, and he's not ruled out of tomorrow night's game.
Well, that'd be great. I feel like Hyman would get up for that game for sure. Listen, the Oilers cannot take any more injuries. So this is great news for Oilers fans. And if I have one suggestion for the Leafs, it's just to freaking shoot the puck as much as you can, because goaltending's scary here in Edmonton. So
it's the Michael Bunting, Zach Hyman showdown.
Oh my
showdown of the ages.
There's just so many storylines. There's so many
David
storylines.
versus Matthews? Nah, Hyman versus Bunting.
The casual fan would be like, what? Okay, quickly to end the podcast. Spezza, we talked about him a lot on last week's episode. 5-game suspension on his hit on Pionk. Do we agree? Do we disagree? I think this is fair. It was a big hit. I understand again that the refs should be held accountable, because if Pionk's knee with Sandin was initially called, this would not even be a conversation. However, it is, and it was a pretty big and bad hit from Spezza, in my opinion. However, Spezza is a gem. He's an angel. We don't talk poorly about him on this podcast, so I still have all the love for him. But what do you guys think about his 5-game suspension?
I don't know. As much as I think it is a good suspension, I think at the same time it could be a little lower. It's such a difficult thing to talk about, just because of the fact that it was a bad hit, and you don't really know. It was also predatory. He was going for him.
Yeah.
But it was also at the same time, do we think that Spezza meant to take his knee and hit him in the head? That's the difficult part. And it's I just think it's such a tough area and such a tough way that Pionk is going for that puck. And it's just Spezza did put himself in such a difficult position. And as well,
I think that's it. I think that's exactly it. I think Spezza, do I think by any stretch of the means Spezza wanted to take Pionk's head off? No, never. Spezza's not that guy. But I think Spezza knew what he was doing, and I think he kind of saw red for a little. He knew he was going straight for Pionk. And the situation was that his knee did clobber his head. The reason why I'm okay with the 5-game suspension is because it's the head, it's the neck. Mm-hmm. That is a scary area for anyone. And I mean, Spezza did drive straight to Pionk's head, so I get it. But in that, I don't it was an intentional hit, but I don't think he intentionally wanted to take his head off of his body. It's such a gray area in that sense, but the league needs to be more consistent. I will say that, because some of the stuff they call and some of the stuff that they don't call does not make sense. So it's weird.
The only reason I was surprised by the length is because Spezza doesn't have a history.
True.
I figured that would have played a role. Maybe it would have been 3. But yeah, no, it was a predatory hit, dangerous hit. He hit the head. That alone should make it a long-term suspension. I'll stand by my opinion that I think the refs should also be punished for something like that, because they are the reason it gets to that point. And I know they like to sit back and not impact the game, but by doing that, they impact the game even more. Once officiating decides to just pick and choose what to do, it creates problems. I think yesterday's Formula One race was another good example of what happens when you just let one call go, and then you have to make it up with another call that makes an impact and looks super controversial at the end of the day. So yeah, it should. The refs should face some type of disciplinary action for it as well, for letting it get to that. Not suspended or just get a talking to, get a fine. Maybe you have to, maybe suspensions as well. I don't know how you'd punish refs, because the league doesn't punish refs, so we don't know what the precedent for that is. Yeah, they're perfect. Even just doing they need to just let the refs take questions at the end of the game as well.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
That'd be great.
That'd be so great. That's such a good idea. I love that.
Yeah, because I think, does the NBA do that, or do they?
MLS. Oh, so MLS allows, I don't know if it was Run Reporter. Did we talk about it last week? I think we might
No,
have.
I don't think
No?
so. No.
And then I think the NBA has to put a report in of
Yes.
why they made certain calls, which I'd be okay with either. I mean, it makes so much sense, and it would allow the NHL to really, I know they don't like judging their refs and they don't like talking about refs in general. But it would really show the side of who's doing good and who's doing bad. And it would make things a lot more easier to just know whether they're doing a good job or not.
Yeah, the closest we get to that in the NHL is stuff with what wasn't there a game, I want to say, like Buffalo and someone else this week, where like there was a key goal late in the game that was either waved off or scored and was the wrong call, and the refs basically just a day later were like, yeah,
Yep.
so we gave the wrong call there. Literally does nothing, but yeah, just letting you know we did. That's probably the best we get.
Thanks for your honesty. Quickly before we wrap this up, predictions for the Leafs and the Oilers. I'll start it off, and don't tell anyone in Edmonton I said this, please. I think that the Leafs will win either 3-1 or 3-2. I think Connor McDavid's going to have a night, but I think that because of the lack of goaltending and defense right now for the Oilers and everything else that they're struggling through, that the Leafs are going to be able to get by in this one.
I think it'll be a track meet. I think it'll go 5-3.
Damn. Okay. For who?
The Leafs. I think with the way Justin Hall's playing, the way the Leafs defense really hasn't shown how, like, compared to earlier on in the season, how good they were. And with McDavid on one side and Matthews on the other, like, I just think they're going to go back and forth scoring.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking through the injuries for the Oilers as well, just to kind of keep informed. And I mean, no one's jumping at me as like a key loss for the Oilers.
So Duncan Keith might come back. Mike Smith apparently should be back for tomorrow's game. Now, that being said, Mike Smith's been out for a while. So we talk about Peter Marazzic being cold because of injury. It's a breath of fresh air for Oilers fans to hear about Mike Smith, but I don't really know if this is the game for him to wean back into.
Yeah, I also think expectations for Mike Smith are high amongst Oilers fans because of last season, and they probably forget that he has many seasons before that where he has been pretty bad. So I think I actually still remember when they announced Mike Smith was starting the first game against Chicago in the bubble. I made a joke that it'll be 5-1 after the end of the first, and it ended up being 4-1 after the first. So I was close, and then they won with Koskinen for the rest of the series. But yeah, like I think it'll be a high scoring one as well, because just like it'll probably McDavid and Draisaitl will do their thing, but like have very little concern for defense. So then the Leafs will strike on those opportunities. The Oilers goaltending is suspect at all times, same with their defense. And I don't know who's starting tomorrow. For the Leafs. I don't know if we've had a confirmation yet, but like Jack Campbell kind of seems to be in the middle of his like coming down to earth. So he might allow it. It hasn't been noticeable so far because it hasn't really cost them yet. Like, you know, he allowed like 3 goals against Colorado, but they won 8-3. He allowed 3, but they lost in the shootout. He allowed 4 against Columbus, but like part of that was also the Leafs kind of just like stopped playing in those last 5 minutes. He was good against Tampa he allowed 4 in that one too. I remember it being a lot low score. So yeah, like I think that, or we're getting Marazzic, so like maybe he is a bit more game ready and like can play in that one. But yeah, I think it'll be a high scoring one. I think now saying that it's going to be 1-0, but yeah.
Well, we'll see. So far, so we think three Leafs wins here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I know I know McDavid's going to do something amazing,
He will.
and we're just going to be like, oh, damn it.
He will, because McDavid loves playing the Leafs, and I think Auston loves playing the Oilers. So you got to expect a big game from those two for sure. And I think Connor's been a little quiet lately, so maybe this is like a blowout game for him.
Oh,
Or we'll shut him out like that 3-game series.
Oh my God, right?
Justin Holl will return as Connor McDavid's daddy.
Oh my God. Okay, let's end on that note. Everyone, this has been episode 14 of the Leafs Nation Radio podcast. Nick, Scott, Caroline here with you, and we're excited for tomorrow's game. We're excited for next week's podcast. If you guys have any questions, concerns, comments, anything, you guys know where to find us. And yeah, that's it. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks for listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode.